application or permit, they can just go right to the website, apply, and that really starts this whole chain of reaction to the village staff. They can also check the status of their permits, so on and so forth. And so we kind of talked about a phased approach. Let me take that back up. Tracy had some thoughts on different phases. I'll go through some of these modules. So my viewpoint allows for workflow within the departments and the people, so they can actually see what their department is being charged with. Business licenses, that's a database of businesses. Integration with Laserfiche, they couldn't really give me a price on that. Maintenance, if you want to do maintenance, and all of this stuff rolls up to the website. So it's all interactive with that. And then payroll is a separate application that, the village could use for payroll. So I sort of talked to Mark and Barb about this. They're in the process of sort of evaluating different payroll companies. A lot of payroll companies provide that service. They manage all the logins, they do all of those kinds of things, so on and so forth. So then I thought, give you kind of an example. Here's this might be something you want as a village board. Here's a complaint list. So we've had several people talk about complaints. We can generate this out of the software every month for you if you wanted this. This is a bad screen, but this shows properties in the village. So we would own all of this data. We own all of this data, and everybody here at the village hall can log in and actually see what's happening on every single property. And the web interface will allow citizens to see what's happening on their own property as well. So here's a list of the permits that were taken, and you'll notice this is from 1/1/25 to 7/31/25. And this is a list that you can see out of the system. And then here's the McDonald's processor. So this shows all the different permits and complaints, the numbers, and it shows how long or how many are being processed, whether they're completed, whether they're expired. And then here's the life cycle. So this shows the total days. So the whole process from web through the village staff, the idea here is to speed up the time that it takes from permit to actually delivery. So we've had the software for quite a few years. The idea was to go, if I go back to the screen here. Let's go back. The idea would be to do phase 1, and this is what the tech committee evaluated last month. So we would do the field inspection for about $6,200. That would increase the fees $3,000, well within the budgeted amount that we have. And tonight, what I really wanted to do is just kind of get your feedback, and the next step would be to take this back to the software provider and get a new contract, which the village attorney should review. So things have changed, tons of hacking, tons of different things. We want to make sure that their agreement is accurate and up to speed. So I'm looking for your thoughts and questions and feedback tonight.
Okay, any questions for Bill? Go ahead, Janice.
Thank you, Bill. I think it's really comprehensive, and I really appreciate the work involved. You and I talked a little bit about some of the challenges involved in working with the vendor and getting all the information that was needed to pull this together. I want to make sure that when we're talking about money, that we're clear about the difference between NRCs and recurring costs and money spent over time. So there's $100,000 approximately spent over time, since the inception of all of this. And then we're talking about in phase 1 a an annual increase of $3,000, which is in budget, seemingly based on what is a reduction, versus what we were paying in 2025, apparently. Because we were for reasons as we've discussed, we don't see the detailed billing, which is one of my questions about all of this, about the software actually. But anyways, so it's $3,000 additional one time. Is that right? And then
So for the two modules, so
one of them is 32, one is 3,000. Looks like one time.
yes, 62. It would be 6,200 change.
And then 3,000 annually.
Yes, that
Which,
includes.
as near as we can tell, relative to what we paid last year, still is less.
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm not arguing with it, I just want to make sure I follow it. And then what I don't understand is when we get to phase 2, when we get to my viewpoint and my app workflow and so forth, it seems like the numbers haven't changed. Is that right, that the numbers don't change, or is there?
So there's more cost, there's a setup fee, and there's more annual fees that will be applied.
But in that slide, they're not shown.
We didn't cost out, phase 2 because, number one, we got to get through phase 1.
Understand.
And so there's money set aside for training in phase 1. And it's my hope, secretly, openly, that it kind of reboots the use of the software. And so if we provide Jim and his team, more capabilities. The logic, I think, the discussion points at the committee, at the tech committee, was that if we spend a little bit more money on software and we empower people, we can do more with less staff time and less, employee money. So that's why we went with phase 1. So we get phase 1 done, we go into phase 2, cost it out, and if we need phase 3 and 4 and 5, we can budget for that. Yeah.
In the community portal functionality,
Yeah.
can you explain to us a little bit more what overall you get from that?
Sure. So we would be able to take complaints and not only take complaints, that they would go into the database and they'd be able to track the complaints. The reason I showed you the reports tonight were that you can actually see that there's traceability all the way through. So if you notice the one report starting in January, there was no activity all the way until May. And so the employees started using the software again in May. So you get the complaint traceability, you get objective management, you get ability to pay permits online. Those go directly into the system. East Dundee, is that where you work, Tracy? So East Dundee, Chris Veneri used to be the zoning officer here. I called him, talked to him about it. So they're using it very, very effectively. So there's complaints, there's permitting, there's the ability for citizens to log in and view their own account, all of that stuff.
So this allows me as a resident then to see things like permits applied for and violations reported in my area without doing a FOIA request, for example.
Can't say yes to that.
Is that the idea?
That is the idea.
Right.
So there's different settings, just like other software, where you can change the settings to turn that stuff off and on. We would control those settings as a village on how we wanted to roll that out.
Right.
But we probably would not have the public being able to view who did the complaint. Like resident Billy Bob at 1 Thirsty Drive wouldn't show up the name.
I wouldn't be that
complaint.
relevant. It's relevant that a complaint was made.
Yeah.
So does either of these modules provide for enforcement of a policy by which complaints can be entered? So what I mean by that is, if someone calls and says, I have a complaint, then and you say, well, what's your name? And they say, well, I don't want to tell you. Then if the policy is that we don't take anonymous complaints, does the workflow end there?
So again.
Oh, and then, of course, with other similar blocking conditions that happen later.
Again, you get a certain amount of anonymous complaint, partial complainant, that kind of thing. We have the ability to set those in the software. So there's a little bit of it takes a lot of time to figure this stuff out. So they'll do a train the trainer, meaning we'll be able to change those settings to which fields are required, which fields aren't, based on what we determine as the village. As a policy.
So theoretically, as you understand it, if we had a policy that required certain boxes to be checked to make it a complaint that we wanted to record,
they all get recorded. So if somebody pushes the button, they would get recorded. They can put bogus information in there too, right? So they all get recorded. I guess the most important thing is that they get vetted. So if there is a complaint, we had a gentleman in here tonight with a noise complaint, firecracker complaint. So these are, I'm sure the police department tracks every single complaint that comes in, whether it's bogus or not. This would be the same on the permitting side and on the zoning side.
If that gentleman had made a short video of the extent of the disturbances he saw it with the software allowing to upload that, is that?
I'd have to get back to you on that. So I've seen some demos of it. The software vendor has shown some videos, but it really is customized to the village. And I think that I can't underline the importance of enough that having that traceability from the time the complaint comes in, making sure we follow up on those things, and then empowering these people that are out there to do objective, zoning violations, and it's hard to do that when you got to run back to the office, log into Casell. So with a mobile app, this year we have to buy some new computers anyhow because for the Windows 11 upgrade. So if we can empower those folks with mobile apps, you're just going to get that much more objectivity in all of this enforcement. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, anybody else? Frank, go ahead.
Just one question. Who currently uses the software?
So there's a handful of people in Village Hall. So all finances are all in there. So the finance people do. Tracy uses it. Actually, Tracy's kind of a power user of the software. And now the enforcement guys are all using it as well. And so pretty much those staff people. We did find out last week that it's an unlimited user. You can add unlimited users, and those of us who are in the tech world know that there's a limitation on the number of connections that SQL Server can have. So it was a little misleading, but if we're committed to this, then we can roll this out to as many of the users as we want to, so they can actually see it. And if we run into these SQL Server connection charges, we just have to pay for the upgrade.
Okay, so I actually have a follow-up question. So you had mentioned creating efficiencies, and anytime you can measure productivity, it's a good thing, from a management perspective. So
Right.
has the vendor given us or you guys any idea of what the potential savings are? Because obviously we're spending $3,000, if we can save $10,000 by using software, it becomes a worthwhile investment, right? So have they given you any idea of a history of users and what they may have saved over time by using the software?
I can certainly follow up with that for you. It is logical that if we roll it out to more people, and more people have access and we add more modules to it, then it's a few dollars to do that. But a lot of people are part-time here, And if we can empower them to be out in the field more than running back and forth to the office, to me, that's a huge productivity gain right there.
And I guess my concern would be, do we have enough users, and is it being implemented and managed properly to get the savings out of it? So it would be nice to know
Yeah.
that information.
So I'll try to follow up with you. I mean, I think that if we deploy this, you're going to get a reboot in the usage. I think we've had a lot of turnover over the last few years, and a little bit of training will go a long way on getting the most efficiency out of it. So, that's my thought on. I'll ask them if they have any, like cost calculators or something like that.
Thank you.
Okay, Nick, go ahead.
Thank you, I'll make it quick. I've used software, the new modules in phase one, similar to these, and they're very nice for the residents and for the users, just logging in, being able to upload your documents or your complaints, your data. Do you have any idea, or could you find out, what tasks in the office itself would you anticipate would be eliminated? So similar to Frank's question, kind of like what would the return on the investment be, but what tasks, like what would we be gaining from this in the office? Very nice for it to come in digitally and the complaints, it's like that efficiency for the resident. But what are,
So I'll respond to that. So I'm also a citizen here, and I don't get paid for this, right? So we're all volunteers. So right now, the method is the Manila method, Manila folder method, right? So all the complaints go into a folder, they get shuffled around, right? I mean, that's the size of it. So one of the complaints was, hey, how do we speed this process up? How do we get the permitting process? How do we do the inspections, make sure? So I think one of the byproducts here is to establish a real process that we can go from the Manila folder thing to software that creates and forces that collaboration between all the citizens. So from my perspective, I'll see what kind of tasks what it can actually do, but I think it'll establish a process so we can speed it up, yet maintain that integrity of going out into the field. And I think that's marketing, we talked about that, and I think the village needs that, personally, as a citizen. So that's why I'm kind of roamed the boat in that direction, so.
And one of the goals, the system stays fixed, and if employees change, they have to follow the process and the system's requirements, and we don't let things slip, because once we establish that policy and that platform, it won't matter if Jim retires, or Alex retires, or I retire, the system lives past the individual employee. That's what we're trying to get to.
Can I just follow up real quick?
Sure.
So that makes a ton of sense, having that replicatable process built into the system, because the task part is really let's use a permit, bringing it into the office, handing it to somebody, scanning it in, and getting it to somebody else's desk. Because ultimately the software brings it to that final desk right away. So it's that Manila folder process. But the one thing I look at, we just got done doing our annual budget, and we were like down to the wire. I mean, we are, right on the fence if we have $1 or don't in the annual budget. And these things are going to come up throughout the year. It's $6,200 on this, and then it'll be something else coming up, and they all add up. That's really the reason for the question is where is the efficiency in the office? Like, where do we get the return on the dollars? I mean, that is super valuable, like what you said, Lamar, that replicatable process. That makes a ton of sense. So thank you.
So just to add,
Go ahead.
so just to add one more thing is, if the data stays with the village, then the more history you create, the more power you have, or more knowledge you have of each one of these residents, of each one of these complaints. So as these percolate through the village and get into legal at some point, the more documentation you have, the the sharper, the smarter the village can operate. And I don't know how you put a cost on that, or a price on that.
Okay, go ahead, Shannon.
One of the things, I mentioned it when we were talking a few minutes ago, but I didn't follow up on the observation that if you were to click on an invoice for one of these charges for Civic Systems / Casell, there's no backup for it, right? And so what this highlights for me is the importance of the difference between what the software does for us, the great things that the software can do for us, and the policies and procedures that we're trying to maintain. And so we're required right now, today, we have been for some time as a municipality, to keep all of our municipal records in digital form. So that means every single invoice, right, should be available in digital form. And the fact that you can click on any invoice in Civic or Casell and not have an invoice pop up is a problem. And so that's not a technology problem. I don't think that has anything to do with the software. That has to do with how we are enforcing policy. And so my question when it comes to the software is, what tools are available within the software to make sure that policy is enforced? Because it seems like, for example, you should not be able to add an invoice to accounts payable if you do not have a scanned copy of that invoice, period, end of story.
Yeah, so that's a good question for the village's finance person, right? Because I just looked at it, and so when an invoice is coded to the proper GL, you saw it on the screen. I didn't look and see if there was an invoice. I didn't pop that up, but but I couldn't get the details to be able to break down, why we spent that amount of money this year. So today I talked to Civic Systems, and they gave me the cost of this year's annual services. But I would be willing to bet if you drilled in there, you could find out which department it was allocated for, what the appropriate cost is. But I don't know if it's scanned, to an invoice. But it has a capability. Does that make sense? So one more question. So thanks for letting me talk tonight. I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have more good technology stuff coming down the pipe. I have one, so do you want us to, can you give me, I don't need a vote or anything, but can you give me some suggestions on should we move forward trying to get a contract together for presentation, or what are your thoughts?
Well, how about a consensus? If you want us to move forward, raise your hand. And it looks like we have it, Bill.
Okay, all right, thank you. Have a good meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, we'll move on to action items 6.
Stop at TV. Jim Brown. Thank you.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and take your seat early and see if that starts doing that again, because that's my computer with your...
Bill probably can help you with that too, so.
Okay. Thanks, Bill.
Okay, are we ready? So action items, I'm going to move 6D down to discussion items, and that will become 7F. So we'll start out with 6A, motion to remove from the table ordinance 25-09, acceptance of public road improvements in Norton Lake subdivision.
So move.
Second.
Okay, who moved that? Nick?
Just me.
Okay.
Person.
Anderson, okay. Roll call?
Trustee Millette?
Aye.
Trustee Berson?
Aye.
Trustee Benetti?
Aye.
Trustee Bogner?
Aye.
Trustee Hatzenberger?
Aye.
Trustee Mears?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. 6D, motion to approve ordinance 2025-09, acceptance of public road improvements in Norton Lake subdivision.
So moved.
Moved by Mike, second by Janet. Roll call.
Discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, discussion, yeah.
The gist of what I got from reading through the final packet is, I think we've got one of those compromise situations where not everybody's happy, or everybody's equally pissed off. So that's always been one of the two definitions of compromise that we have. So it seems like each party is given a bit, and I believe the HOA is accepting of what we're at right now. So for the near future, I think we can keep in mind as we look at other developments, that the tighter we can put some of this stuff early, the better we are. So, in a PUD or something like that, to make it clear, and then when a homeowners association is empowered, we, as the village, don't actually have a legal standing in that per se, but I think we have I don't want to be too preachy and say moral, but I think we have a vested interest on protect the future residents and make them aware to the limits we have, that, these are what your CCs say, these are what your CR says, this is what your developer has agreed to do, so that they know going forward. And I think, what we've been talking about recently, I think are kind of outlining or identifying those things to make that kind of an outline. So thanks to you, thanks to HR Green, thanks to KTJ, thanks to Anselby, for everybody and thanks to the Homeowners Association for understanding that, we did as much as we could given the lack of a legal standing for what they were really, really long-term wanting us to do. So that's all.
And I think you should recognize.
So did Show Dean follow up in writing with some of the commitments that they made? Obviously, that was on top of what was